Well, after retaking the House of Representatives, congressional Democrats are feeling newly emboldened about rolling back the Second Amendment. Earlier this year, California Democrat Eric Swalwell called for confiscating all so-called assault weapons, scary-looking rifles, and bringing criminal charges against anyone who resisted. We're not misquoting that. He wrote it in an op-ed in USA Today. Then just days ago on Twitter, one critic said this would provoke armed resistance against the government, because obviously it would. Swalwell responded this way, quote, "It would be a short war, my friend. The government has nukes. In other words, obey or we'll kill you." Jumaane Williams is a New York City councilman who joins us tonight. Mr. Williams, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So there's something admirable about the straightforwardness from our old friend, Congressman Swalwell. If you don't obey, we'll just kill you. What do you think of that?
Come on, Tucker, we all have to get to a place where we can have a conversation about what's happening in this country, and have a respectable one. So,
do you think threatening people with violence is a good way to get to that
no,
place?
I don't think that's the good way to have a conversation, nor do I think having a conversation about guns not being part of the problem is a good way to have a conversation. So we should start with guns are a part of the problem and figure out how to deal with it.
Okay, but when a sitting U.S. and by the way, we know Swalwell very well.
Sure.
And I personally like him. We asked him to come on to respond directly. I should say that. But when a sitting U.S. congressman says, you know, if you don't like it, if you're going to resist in any way, we'll just drop your nuclear weapons on you. We don't even threaten our martial enemies with that. I mean, that's a bit much, no?
Well, first I was remiss, you know, prayers and peace of comfort for the victims of the Chicago mass shooting. But like the mother of a victim that happened in California who said she was tired of prayers, she wanted action. We have to have actionable items. And so I don't consider nukes on people who have guns an actionable item. But there are actionable items. And
so you are the moderate for the first time.
I don't know about the moderate.
Well, you're against killing American citizens. So that puts you in the moderate category. So let me just ask you this. So here's my confusion. I have no problem trying to disarm people who are threatening. The problem I have with gun confiscation is that it punishes people like me who pose no threat at all, and many millions of other Americans who have no criminal record, no intent to harm anybody, want guns for self-defense. And it says to them, you're a criminal now because you have a gun that we think
you have jumped to confiscation.
Well, but no, Eric Swalwell, who's a member of the Intel Committee,
but we should have a conversation about, one, is there an issue with guns in this country, and what do we do with that? And the actionable items are quite clear. One, we can address loopholes in assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Two, we can deal with dealers who have been unscrupulous.
Okay.
And three, we can begin to treat guns like we do cars. That's just on the demand side.
But okay.
I mean, on the supply
I'll
side.
address that. I mean,
has to be on the demand
you
side
have
as
members
well.
of Congress, at least one prominent member of Congress, saying we're going to take your guns away by force. Okay. So apparently you're not calling for that, though. We both know you're secretly for that. But
we don't both know that, but okay.
Okay, but I believe you're for that. I believe
you
many
can believe what you like. I'm here to have a discussion.
Are you for that?
On the issue? No. Listen, we should have a discussion.
Okay, then let's talk about magazines.
Sure.
You say high capacity. I think it means any more than 10. If I have a magazine that has 15-round capacity, why is that a threat to anyone?
We have to start with, and I'm repeating this again, with everyone agreeing that guns and the access to guns are an issue in this country.
Well, how about this? I don't agree with that.
You do not.
I think a gun is a tool, and in the hands, like any tool, in the hands of someone with malintent, it's very dangerous.
So
I don't have malintent. So would I be forced to give up any magazines that I had that exceeded the capacity?
I will say this. If a hammer killed 33,000 Americans every single year, we would be screaming and yelling, let's regulate hammers. Guns are only made for killing. What I'm saying is let's at least treat guns how we treat vehicles.
But you're speaking theoretically, and I want to speak tangibly.
I'm speaking specifically.
So there are millions upon millions of so-called high-capacity magazines out there. They're in circulation, tens of millions of them. What do we do with those?
So I mentioned three things. I mentioned dealing with the high-capacity magazines and the assault weapons. I mentioned the loopholes of gun dealers.
Stick with the magazines.
But I mentioned also treating guns like we treat vehicles. That's just on the supply side.
Okay, but I'm sorry to press you for specifics, but since this is what you do, let me press you. There are tens of millions of magazines that fit more than 10 rounds in circulation. normal people with no criminal records own them. What do we do with them?
I tell you what, in New York City, we're the safest city of guns we've been since 1951. I've been a leading voice in dealing with gun violence in New York City.
Oh, so you won't answer the question. That's why nobody trusts the gun people, because we know that you're gun grabbers because you're not
guns,
straightforward.
again, part of the gun violence problem. I asked you this last time. You
what
wouldn't
would you
answer
do
it.
with the magazines?
But
is that not a fair
But
question?
no, we have to start from someplace where we all agree.
No,
But
we
you
don't.
want to die? We absolutely
no, tell me
do.
what you think, and then
Because
maybe you can convince me.
The way you start, we'll never have a conversation. So I want to start from
you
having
need
a
to
conversation.
lie to me first,
No.
and then, you're not going to answer a straightforward adult question.
Are you?
I'm not lying at all.
No,
I
I'm
tell
asking,
you
are you
exactly
going
what
to
I think.
answer a straightforward question?
I'll answer any question.
Are guns a part of gun violence in this country?
Well, of course, they're the tool that is used very often to commit
So
violence.
we have to start from that point.
Okay,
Finally,
that's fine.
Thank you
So
for agreeing. Thank you for agreeing.
If I have a high-capacity magazine in my possession, your definition of high capacity, and I don't want to give it up, will you take it from me?
So let's take that one off the table.
Why?
What about the other two?
Wait, why are we
Because
taking that
you
one?
like to
Hold on.
stick on the one that will prevent the
I like to
conversation
ask
from
very
going forward.
simple factual
No,
questions
I mentioned
and
three
see if
things.
you're straightforward
I
enough to
mentioned
answer
three
them.
things. And so the way this happens in government, people present things
But why won't
and we
you
figure
answer
out
that?
because you want to get to a point where people will reject any conversation about dealing with guns.
But I think all of our
I
viewers
want to get
know
to
where
a
you
point.
stand.
No,
the
they
answer
don't.
is, of course, I'm going to take it from you and
No, they
punish you
don't.
if you don't give it to me.
The fact of the matter is we have less than 5% of the population, and we own over half of civilian guns and 30% of mass shootings. But thank you for agreeing that guns are a part of gun violent problems in America. Next time we have a conversation,
I
we can get to the
always
fix.
say what I think. In contrast to you, I will say.
I always say
Mr.
what I
Councilman,
think as well.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for
I
having me.
appreciate it.